Welcome back to episode number 2 of the TikTok podcast, where we talk watches and everything that goes around the watch market. And once again, I have to talk you through this podcast. Imad, once again, welcome back to podcast number 2. We are on our second podcast today. And last month, when we had this chat initially, you told us that there's going to be a lot of action coming in February. How has the month of February been so far?
Actually, the month of February turned out a little slower than what we expected. Usually, what we see is that coming into the new year, people take the month of January to settle in a bit, get ease into the new year with work and all of that stuff. So usually we see a little bit of an uptake in February, but for some reason this month it's been a bit slow. It's been a bit quiet. It's not that it's slow, but it's been a lot quieter than what we expected. But still, it's been all right. We can't complain. We've had quite a few new pieces come in store, quite a few pieces sold as well and sourced for some clients. So it's been okay. It's a little quieter than we expected. The Sri Lankan market in terms of the exchange rates and the economy is a bit not very settled at the moment. So that could be one of the reasons. But it's not been bad. I can't really complain, and we'll just see what the next few months has to say as well.
So what you're saying is, Imad, people are making their choices in February, and now slowly towards March and then towards April, people are going to come up with those big purchases, the watches that they're looking after. They've been doing their research, and is that what you're trying to imply?
Could be. Some people also hold off, buying anything early this year because obviously all the new releases from most of the brands come out in April. Some brands like the LVMH brands actually had their new releases for this year already, just about 2 weeks ago. I'm sure you'll get into that stuff as well. But yes, some people hold off for that. Some people just, take their time to ease into the year and start. So it's a little too early to say, but can't really complain. It's all right. It's got to go with, the take it as it comes, I guess.
Absolutely. I think one thing that we've also seen in the last few months is that there's been a lot of interest growing in the Sri Lankan market for new watch purchases as well. People who are trying to buy their first Rolex, and taking a step from, I think they've been a watch collector for a while, but they want to now take that next step on to buying something a little bit more exquisite, something like a Rolex. So, what would that dynamic be? Say, if someone's having a decent watch collection and they want to upgrade this year, so how would that turn out in the next few months?
Yeah, so like we said, obviously since 2022, prices have stabilized a lot. I would say for the last 6 months, prices have been pretty stable. They've come down to a more realistic price point, right? So a lot of people can now start looking at going into not only Rolexes but even the entry level categories where they can start looking at purchasing and stuff like that. So it's a very good. It's actually what I would say a buyer's market for new buyers and for mature buyers as well, or mature collectors. It's a good time to be now start to look in to either buy your first Rolex, your mid-tier Rolex, or even the bigger pieces that you've been looking for. Even in the Patek AP, in the world of Patek and AP, also prices have calmed down, and they're a very stable place. I like to keep saying. So yeah, you have a lot of people now that are starting to understand that and are now confident and comfortable to start putting their money there, and are not worried that price is going to come crashing. And there are still a lot of people though, like quick take. A lot of people still tell me. Even last week we had a client that bought a watch from what he's like, oh, I feel like the watch market will go down further. Honestly, I couldn't say. I don't have a crystal ball like all the other dealers in the world
I
say.
thought you had inside information about the market trends.
Not at all. We can only see what the trends are locally and overseas, but I don't really think prices can go down any further. It could, right? You never know. But a lot of two-tone pieces, gold pieces at or below retail, like I said, sports models also not exponentially too expensive. So I think that a very very safe place. You could always see a very small variation of maybe 5 to 10%, but that's a given in any market. So I'm pretty confident and happy and comfortable with where we are, and I think people will start understanding that and get there as well.
So here's a very interesting take. I've been reading up on watches, and there's been a incredible demand on vintage watches, where people are chasing after vintage watches to buy one to see if they could wear them around, and then two is also to keep them as valuables and expect something in the future. But I think, Imad, you've also been a very vivid fan of vintage watches. So what's your take on that?
I mean, definitely, it's not a new trend. Obviously, vintage watches have gained popularity, I would say, over the last 5 to 6 years, especially. Obviously, because one, with the increase in price of modern pieces and modern models, You have a lot of people now going back and appreciating things from the past, obviously the vintage pieces, but also the last, I would say, again 5 years, we've had big actions that have sold very important and expensive vintage pieces like the Paul Newman Daytona. We had the GMT, I don't remember the actor's name, but that sold. Paul Newman's Daytona sold twice. Last year there was another auction for another vintage piece. I can't remember which exactly. So there is a lot of chatter online, especially of what's happening in the vintage world and the auction world. So that's garnering a lot of interest, especially like we've seen the younger generation starting to get into the collecting watches. So what happens is they go on social media, they either see the watches, the modern pieces that you have, or they see vintage. So if you're somebody who has the stomach for hunting for these pieces, or who has a particular interest in that kind of a thing, this is the new age, the new generation of people that are starting to get into vintage pieces. Even me myself, when I started and appreciated vintage, I would still like to collect vintage
I
more.
think you had that beautiful day date that we reviewed a while back.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, I love that piece to bits. So yeah, I mean, I would say even a lot of the younger generation are now getting into vintage, and also you see the more seasoned collectors that maybe have a ton of modern pieces in their collection as a way of now diversifying or finding something else interesting. They're starting to look at vintage as well. So that could be one of the reasons. It's not something that's very recent, but yeah, I would say over the last 5 to 6 years, the vintage market itself has seen an uptick in interest, maybe not in prices, but in interest at least.
But I think all this while we have that interest coming in for the vintage watches, I think one model or one version stands out. I think the Submariner. I think we have a few in
Yeah,
our collection as well. And see, I think this model has always been that model that stands out across the generations, across the ages. Is there anything specific why people still go after the Submariner on its pure form?
yes, and again, two answers to that question. Firstly, in the vintage world, I would say still the most hyped or the most demanded vintage watch from the sports Rolex lineup is obviously the Daytona. Like I said, the Paul Newman Daytona, at the time it was the most expensive Rolex watch sold at auction. But after that, yes, like we've always said, the Rolex Submariner is the most iconic Rolex and the most iconic watch in the world, right? If you take a look at this watch, the black dial, black bezel, the case and everything has been almost identical since its inception back in 1954. Obviously there have been small design changes over the last 75 years, I believe, but essentially it's been the same watch in its purest form. So that kind of also adds to it, where it goes to show how true and tested and timeless that design is, and why everybody loves it. Back in the 50s and 60s, it was actually used as a dive watch. It was used on expeditions to explore the oceans. It was actually used as a dive timer by divers back in the day. They were used by countless Navy SEALs, Marines, back in the day as well, when you had to use a watch to actually survive underwater. So it's all those things that add up, and obviously people like to associate action and adventure with their watches. So you wear a Submariner, even though you might not go diving, people in the past did. It's good to know that you can go diving with it. I have personally dove with a couple of Submariners. So yeah, it just there isn't one straight answer to it, but yeah, it's
But
simple, it's the best, it's easy.
but I have a little bit of a personal choice. Instead of the standard black dial, I like the vibe of the Hulk or even the Starbucks, because
Obviously,
of the elegance it gives out in contrast to. I mean, the Sabrina is its signature and its iconic piece, but the Hulk or the Starbucks gives out something a little bit special, in my opinion.
I agree. For me, the Hulk is also more so than the Starbucks. I prefer the Hulk. I've had one personally for a long time as well. Yeah, obviously the Hulk was also made to commemorate the 50 years, not the 50. This is called the anniversary. I don't think it was the 50. The Kermit was the 50. But nonetheless, this is obviously made to commemorate the first Submariner that was made, right? So this is an anniversary model. The Hulk is special because it's the only time they made a Submariner with a green dial. Now the Starbucks is also black dial. The previous generation 116,
I think that's I
1661.
think that's why the value of this is also
Exactly. That's why
retained
this
or even amplified.
that's why this is probably the most desired in the modern world, the most desired sub. When you compare it with the Hulk, the Starbucks, the Kermits, the date subs, the no date subs, and all of that. This is obviously the most desired. The price points are very, very stable and strong. And yeah, I mean, it's a great watch. You don't usually see this much color in a steel Rolex, so this is the only chance you get to wear something like that. So yeah, everybody. I mean, this is probably the second most loved sub on the planet, I would say.
Like being the first to the iconic piece.
Yeah, the black. It's a battle between the date and the no date. Some people prefer the no date because that's how the first subs came. Some people, especially Sri Lanka, like I've said, prefer the date. They like to have some complication. So yeah, obviously the black subs what sell the most. The price points obviously much lower, and it's black. It's a lot easier to wear with a lot of outfits and stuff, and it's an easy wear. So a lot of people gravitate towards that. But if you have the budget and if you want something a little funkier, then they go for the Hulk.
Brilliant. I think, Imad, we have a full box here.
Yeah.
We have two new additions, something special on the bottom corner. I think something that we've not seen for a while.
Yep.
Tell us more about the Cartier.
The Cartier Santos. Again, I know I say this a lot, but I genuinely love these watches. The price point is amazing. So these are basically Cartier's take on a steel sports watch with an integrated bracelet. So this is the large size. So this is, I believe, 40 millimeters. This one's got the beautiful blue dial. We've got the white dial in stock as well. What's the best thing about these watches, apart from everything else, is also the quick change strap system that Cartier is one of the first to implement. Also, the quick changing link system. So yeah, this is a beautiful watch. It basically would do everything that any other sports watch from any other model brand can do. It's elegant, just like
I think
Cartier,
I think Cartier gives always tries to give that luxury feel on all of their
and also value
timepieces.
for money, right? If you consider the price point with this and any other Rolex, you're getting essentially the same the same quality, construction, movements, as well as brand heritage. Cartier, to this day made the first wristwatch in the world, even before Rolex. Before Rolex. So yeah, I absolutely love this. This we have here on blue dial. We've also got the white dial in stock. There's also a new green dial, which is beautiful, which
Okay,
I'm yet to get
so
my
so so
hands on.
wild one. So you have the blue dial as well as the white dial. What would be your go-to option? For me personally, the blue dial looks very elegant because it stands out from the rest of the herd.
Blue is obviously beautiful. It's got a deep, rich texture. It's got a nice gradient finish as well. But for me personally, I think I'd go for the white. It's just more classic Cartier for me. I like the contrast of the white indexes and the white dial. Sorry, black indexes and white dial. And yeah, it's honestly the perfect watch. This is slightly bigger for me, so I have made up my mind that I need to get myself the medium one day. But yeah, it also comes with an extra leather strap, so it can be worn as a sports watch, can also be dressed up to be worn as a dress watch. And the price point is just amazing. The value for money you're getting for something like this, as opposed to something the same price
But
range.
but I have a little bit of a argument here is that Cartier sticks to its standardized version from the start to the end because in fact Rolex has seen a lot of variations and trend upliftments from their timepieces as well, even with the GMP Master, two variations, the Pepsi, the Batgirl, the Batman. But Cartier has always stood as that elegant masterpiece over time. It's like a watch that has just stayed over time.
It's Cartier, right? That's the thing. Cartier knows what they're doing. Cartier has innovated a lot. Like I said, this quick release bracelet system, I believe Cartier, I'm not 100% sure, but I think Cartier was the first, or at least one of the first to do it. So there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of technology that goes into it. And firstly, for a brand like Cartier that is known for their wristwatches, the tanks and stuff like that, to actually come out and make a sports watch is a first. So I think that speaks volumes what they're trying to do and be to be relevant in the contemporary market and the contemporary watch world itself. But like, I mean, how could you not like this? If you compare this to
No,
the
all
same.
I'm saying is that it's been. I mean, some people might like it, some people might not like it. But for
Exactly.
me, I feel like watches need to evolve as well as we progress around. We'll talk about evolution in a little bit. We have an exciting segment coming up later on. But my personal opinion, my hot take is that watches need to evolve. Of course, some watches can stay in its own self in terms of their brand identity, but a little bit of evolution would always be lovely. That's
I
what I
think
feel.
they have. I think they've come a long way from where they were. But the thing is that if you know Cartier, if you know, the Galbays from the past, if you know how Louis Cartier made the Santos for Santos Dumont for him to fly across the English Channel on his hot air balloon or whatever it was, I think they've come a long way. I think they're here to stay. Because actually at the height of the market, even the Santos, so some of them were selling above retail as well. These were very hot at one point. even today they are, and I think they're amazing watches for the money, especially if you compare, the price point of this and something like the Air King is the same. This is a Rolex, yes. This is actually the Cartier, I would say, is cheaper, and I would 110% go for the Cartier over, a Rolex for the same price. I absolutely love these watches. Again, I say that a lot,
But
but I think it's true. If you've got to try these watches on, you've got to see them in person to understand where they come from and how much value there is to be derived from these.
speaking about vintage, I might have a little bit of a exception. Is that I like the numerals on the older references on the Submariner or the GMTs. The curved numbers actually felt really nice. In contrast to we're seeing more of a box
Yes.
hexagonal shaped numerals coming in.
Yes, that they had different fonts over the years. There were serif fonts, there were flat fours, and all of that stuff. That is what makes them special, and each different font has different appeals to different.
I think they've evolved to cater to a modern genre of people, and this is
Correct.
what you call evolution. I understand.
I mean, yeah, I guess so. What can I say to that? That is a good statement actually, but I don't have an answer to that. You've left me speechless.
But
I
anyhow,
still stand by my point though. I actually, hot take. I think I would personally rather wear a medium Santos than a Rolex Submariner.
okay, let
I
it
said
go
that
on the
first.
record. Let
I
it
said
go on the
that first.
record.
Done. 100%. I maybe it's because I just got these and I haven't had them for a while, but I absolutely 110% love these watches. You will see in one of the future podcasts, you'll see me wearing a medium one on my wrist, and I will stand by what I just said now.
And also, see, we have a box full of watches at the end of the day. Here's a context, a question that most of the people come in from our Sri Lankan customers is that, okay, of course, Rolex has its guarantee for a watch, but if I have a problem or if I have an issue, what will the repair process be? What will the maintenance be? How do I make sure that I get my timepiece, which I spent a little bit of a significant amount, get the correct treatment and the proper care in terms of getting it serviced or getting it repaired or whatnot?
That's a very good question, but a very broad question. So
Iman, let's go very small. No,
This is a very good question. This is a question I get asked a lot on warranties, taking care of your watches, servicing, and all of that stuff, right? So I'll take the essence of your question and I'll put an Imad twist to it. So three answers, right? Do I need to service my watch every year or every 5 years, like the manufacturer says? How much warranty does my watch come with? And then a lot of people also ask us about our warranty that we provide when you buy a watch, right? So firstly, when we sell a watch, we check everything. We have a time graph, we run it on. If needed, we get it checked by our independent watchmakers as well. Make sure that the watch is running within tolerances. An automatic watch will never be 110% accurate, but each brand has their own tolerances. For example, Rolex is at +1 or -2 seconds a day. Cartier is also at the same. A lot of Omegas and APs. No, Omegas are +2, -2. APs are within 5 seconds a day, right? So that's normal tolerances. So we make sure all our watches are within the tolerances, and we cover them with a 1 year warranty, right? So if anything happens within the warranty period, we sort it out free of charge. These brands per se, Rolex has a 5 year warranty. Cartier, IWC, Richemont brands now have a 7 year warranty. Most, I would say, Omega is 3 or 5 years, but most brands now offer 3 to 5 years of service because of the advancement in technology and their movement making. They can ensure that longevity in service intervals. I always say what I learned was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So yes, you might have had the watch for 5 years, but just because it says that you have to service it every 5 years, or because the warranty is 5 years, doesn't mean it needs to be serviced every 5 years, right? If your watch is running fine, if it's especially if it's running, that's one. If it's running within tolerances, it's perfectly fine, right? Yes, you can get it checked up by us or by one of the brands and stuff like that. It's fine, but in general, you take care of watch. Don't drop it. Don't, I keep telling people something they don't know. Don't keep it near magnets. So your phones, your iPads, your laptops, speakers, because obviously these are mechanical timepieces that are pieces of metal in the movement. If it's near a speaker, it can get what's called magnetized, and that can cause it to run erratically. But otherwise, if your watch is running fine, if you've taken care of it, there is no necessity to service it every year or every 5 years. So that's a very, very important.
But also on top of that, you told me something about how if there's a damage, of course we can't avoid wear and tear, and let's say accidental slip or something.
Yeah.
So say that the crystal needs a repair. What will the process be like? How will that work out.
So at least for us, we personally offer, that even if you have a warranty repair, if something goes wrong, you can drop it off with us, and we'll take care of it for you. Unfortunately, if you drop your watch and crack the crystal, we can't do the repair for you free of charge. But we have certified watchmakers that we work with, who can do the job for us. We also have, especially for brands like Rolex, Omega, Cartier, we have the authorized agents and service centers in Colombo. We can take to them as well and get it repaired for you. So how it works is you basically bring it to us, we take it to them. um, they check it out, they see what needs to be done, they give us a service code, we check with you if you're okay with it. We don't charge anything, we do all of our servicing and repairing free of charge, and we just basically get it done from you. Pricing, time periods and all can vary depending on the watch and what repairs need to be done. But the thing is that, yeah, anything can be fixed. It might cost money, it might take time, because that's another this thing where, people buy these watches but they're scared to wear them because they'll damage them. We keep telling them,
Well,
wear your
what's the
watch.
point?
Exactly. Wear a watch. Worst case, even if it's something happens, it can always be repaired.
So,
Especially they're worried about scratching them. The polish, and that's easily
so
done.
long story short, your watch doesn't need to be serviced if it doesn't need to be serviced,
No.
and
If it's
don't
running
drop your
fine.
watch.
Correct. Yeah.
Iman, have you dropped any watches?
Thankfully, by the grace of God, no.
Seen you use your mobile phone. You've dropped that 101 times. I'm
Yeah,
very
but I'm a lot
surprised.
more
I'm
careful.
very surprised that you haven't dropped any of your watches.
I'm a lot more careful with my watches than I'm with my phone.
We beg to differ. I think the staff also will beg to differ, and the people who know Imad will also beg to differ on this
The
statement.
watches are safe, guys. Don't worry. I take care of my watches more than I take care of myself and even some family.
And then
and friends.
the more you keep telling and trying to prove that you're right, it feels like it's not true, right? So that's it from the second episode of the TikTok podcast. If you have any comments, do comment below, and we'll try to reply all of those comments on the next episode. And thanks for watching.